as well as some members of the committees, some members wanted to be on more committees. They changed throughout the term, obviously, if people don't can't, because of the change in, like, for instance, if a external board changes their meeting date and time, a member may not be able to participate because they may be working, or so they do change throughout the term. I think the concern of some members of council was that as some participate on, do more committee work than others, that time may not be accurately, like an accurate reflection. But I guess you could just average it out almost, if that's the way. And some people do spend more time on constituency work than others too. So I think it was more like of a fairness question than anything else.
Hi, Wendy, maybe I can add something else though. They're reading into the question a little bit too deep. They're going down the rabbit hole too deep, and really they shouldn't be concerned about what their other colleagues are doing. It's, the question is specific to them. If they sit on 5 meetings, then how many hours are they putting in? If there's another person that sits on 9 meetings, how many hours are they putting in? It shouldn't reflect on any of that. We will take into consideration everybody's individual hours and average them out, but I don't understand why they're a little bit concerned about what the other counselor's doing and all that sort of stuff. It's a very simple question. You know, how many hours are you putting into this, in this job?
I agree, and I don't think it's, you know, and maybe they're concerned that they will be judged if, you know, their colleagues are putting in 15 hours and they're only putting in 9 hours, but the intent of the survey was to gather information on compensation and benefits to ensure that they are being paid fairly for their time. And I mean, if that also comes out of the survey, that there is a great imbalance between certain councillors and certain wards in regards to their time and their committees, and that is something for the perhaps mayor to have that data to be able to maybe more fairly distribute the work, or give other people to be the opportunity to be involved in other areas. You know, it's not meant to judge, it's just meant to, you know, gather the information to pull that all together.
Yes, I understand, and when the mayor, and I should go back, the mayor does like not try and overload one member of council with committees at the beginning of the term. So I should make that clear. He does try and strike a balance so that there's not one that may be more over committeeized, or whatever you want to call it, than the other. It's just that sometimes if the meetings are during the day, and somebody that may not work is more able to attend those meetings. So we have, like, it's looking at the time, their interest, and their expertise.
And again, so, I mean, that's also not a judgment meant to be a judgment on the mayor either, right? Like, that's not you know, the data, if it is found to be an imbalance of time and commitments as a result of the mayor assigning them different committees and agendas and responsibilities, that's not meant to judge him, right? I mean, that was not his intent, to overload somebody and underwhelm somebody else. So, you know, perhaps it's sometimes, you know, you do things in isolation, and this goes for everyone, and it's not until you have the data sitting in front of you in a collated manner that you're like, oh gosh, you know, maybe we do need to relook at distributing things, or so on. So it's not meant, none of this data should be used to judge performance or question somebody's value or their intent. It is to look at the compensation and benefits as they in the hours that they spend doing their work.
Good. I'm going to go to Brandy Lee. She had her hand up, and then to Steve.
I think Wendy kind of covered it a little bit there, but talking about the individuals who work, I think there's needs to be sort of an understanding amongst the council members as well too, that I noticed in the data that some individuals don't have other positions. Some people do have full-time and some have part-time positions. So I think there's going to have to be sort of just a little bit of understanding amongst the committee members as well too, that there might be, I don't think everything can be 100% equally distributed either. You know, in order for something to be done and done well, like someone who's working full time might not be able to take on the same as what someone who's not working at all would.
Steve.
Yeah, I just wanted, Wendy, the different counselors, they didn't put their names on this survey at all, did they? So it's all anonymous. So we're not comparing counselor X to counselor Y. It should all just be, they should all just be totally nameless. And then we work from accordingly. As Chris said, we're not looking at comparing Ward 1 to Ward 3 or Ward 10. It's council as a whole, right? Right across the whole scope.
I told them that their names wouldn't be attached to their responses, so that made some of them feel better too. So.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. We've already started to hear some of your analysis or summaries of what you read in the data. So if we could go back to just a quick roundtable from each of you on what stood out for you in this information and perhaps what is missing. So whoever wants to go ahead. Steve, thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Madam Chair. In particular, when I looked at the benefits, it seemed to be that chiropractor and eyeglasses were a big thing for getting increased. And I know the standard, from what my understanding is, most plans are for eyeglasses, for example, they're in the $200 to $400 range, if that's about right. I've never seen a plan that pays like $1,000 for a pair of eyeglasses or something. So that seemed to be a big one. And I think where I was surprised that I was expecting a lot more health and wellness protection in the benefit plan, that they would want that, dealing with stress levels and things that are going on and the COVID experience. I thought there would have been more concern about that, but there didn't seem to be. I found that it was eyeglasses, massages. One person was complaining about $200 for a massage wasn't enough a year. And in particular with the and some of the benefits for like pharmaceuticals and stuff too, going up, and the difference in paying that. So that's what really jumped out at me. So I'll let someone else talk. Thanks.
Randy Lee, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, to tie into that, actually, it seemed like a lot of individuals were really on board with the idea of a healthcare spending account to be able to compensate in areas that benefited them. So I thought that was very interesting. That was something that it was almost across the board. A lot of people felt that would be a good idea. I'm just kind of scrolling through it at the same time. I also noticed the same thing that Steve mentioned, maybe even just the amounts. Even someone mentioned, to put in 500 for Cairo and things like that. I think a jump from 2 to 5 is quite a large leap, but if we were to look at something around, a little bit of a leap up, and then maybe add in a healthcare spending account, something like that, might be able to assist with providing the services everyone needed. Most people felt too, I felt that they thought everything was pretty equitable and fair. Like there was a couple individuals who maybe thought that either the compensation itself could be could require more or elevated amounts, but overall I didn't see a huge amount of negativity in sort of what was offered. Maybe just some tweaks here and there that needed to be done. I don't know, did anyone else sort of see that as well?
I think, I think at the end with the additional comments, many of the comments were kind of, well, the people who elected to make comments, which wasn't everyone. The general theme was that they weren't compensated enough for the role. Not that they said they were completely underpaid, but the tone of each comment, I think there were 4, was that this is it's generally not enough for the work that we do. Which I find slightly concerning, that the people who took the time to make the comment, it was fairly consistent in the feeling of their compensation.
Yes, so I'll just note that 8 counselors responded. Is that correct, Wendy? Yes, okay. Out of 10, yes?
10.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, the survey was also sent to the mayor, but I didn't really expect a response because really he's kind of compensated separately, but he is subject to the expense account and things like that. But his compensation is a different amount, obviously, and he's considered full-time. So there's a little bit of a difference there. And just to clarify on the health and wellness, members of council during COVID, and I think it's something that we were going to bring back to this committee too. I just need to just speak to the CAO, was that they are allowed to use some of our EFAP programs for mental health and well-being. So they have some of those services available to them as well. Not extensive like the staff do, but they do have they can access some of the services.
Thanks, Wendy. So that's not right now a part of their plan, is that correct? Their permanent plan, I guess.
It's not part of their permanent plan. It was something that the CAO had requested that we do, particularly given the stress and stuff of COVID, that we make those services available to members of council. And I think I'd have to go back to him to see if, and bring Brian into the loop too, to see if it's something that we want to continue or expand on, and bring some recommendations back to the committee.
That's a really good point. And I'm sure well needed. I'm not sure what the expanse is of your EAP program. But if you were allowing them to access certain pieces of it, that's great. It would be great to know what encompasses the EAP program, and perhaps making that a permanent offer for the counselors as a thought. Chris, did you have any other thoughts around the data?
I looked at it a little bit this afternoon, and from what I saw, I instantly noticed that 8 of them responded out of the 10. To be honest, it looked like a lot of it was split, almost like 4 and 4 on everything. The amount of average hours that they spent is about 14.6 for question A and 11.3 for part B of the very first question. It looks like there was 5 yeses. Do you have jobs outside of council, where there was 2 no and 1 abstained from answering that question. So I just went through it and I kind of summarized it in a quick little snapshot, like cheat sheet in front of myself to look at this. A lot of them I was quite surprised with this, honestly. The one where it asked if the budget and the expense amounts were adequate, there were 7 yeses and 1 no. So that one there took me a little bit by surprise. Normally folks like to have a little bit more on their expenses, grow every year, but quite frankly, 7 of the 8 said that they're very pleased with the amount that is allocated to them for their wards. So that one struck quite nicely. I was pleased to see that. Most of them with their benefits plan, if they're not in it, they're already enrolled outside. That's common. My general consensus does fall in line with other people's views on the health spending account. I think it would probably be a good idea to implement something with regards to the HSA. It's just a matter of coordinating the benefits and correlate the two. So if we drop, let's say, the dental or the chiropractor or extended healthcare benefits on those, then the healthcare spending act, or the health spending account would pick up the slack in that area. So that was just kind of my overall review. I did see a lot of the comments. I read them. Not really much of a comment on it. It's normal. I don't see anything outside of what they're suggesting. There was one where one of the counselors had mentioned that the income, their income should be upwards around $50,000 or $60,000. So that perked my curiosity a little bit as well. So I was scrolling through the emails and pull up the spreadsheet that I believe it was Brian that supplied us as well with the other municipalities and see what their incomes were. So that's what I was kind of looking at the data there just before this meeting came in place. So I can't really formulate an opinion on that just yet. whether Barry's counselor's remuneration package is commensurate with the other ones and the populations and all that sort of stuff. But be rest assured, I will go down that rabbit hole, and I will make sure that we can, I guess, make the Barrie City Council's remuneration package as equitable as possible in relation to the other cities out there.
Randy Lee, go ahead.
Do you mind if I just get a reminder on what is the annual salary?
I think it was around 36 or something like that. I got it up just a minute. I'm just gotta find Barry on the
And when
spreadsheet
you
here.
provide the posting, or when you're looking, or however the process works, does it list in there what the expectation is as far as hours go, or is it just kind of open-ended, whatever you put in?
Good question.
Oh, that would be my answer that one. So when we do the nomination packages for the election, we do provide information to the candidates on salary, like on what the compensation is for members of council, as well as like meeting expectations and kind of what their role is. And I do get a lot of questions like during the election campaign from other people, like from candidates concerning concerning their message, like squirrel in front of my face here. So we do provide that information as part of the nomination package, so that when people are submitting their nominations, they're kind of aware of the expectations of the role of a member of council.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Wendy. Do you think, Wendy, could we do a little better job when it comes to explaining committees and expectations around time spent? I do hear a lot of comments around how much time is spent by councillors in different meetings and committees, and they didn't realize that was, really part of it. So it must be difficult to kind of lay that all out for them, I guess, in the beginning.
We can certainly do that as part of the nomination package. During this term, we added a planning committee. So that was another like standing committee we added to try to kind of divide up general committee. So we did add another committee to them. We also, I think just in general, the meetings are longer than they have been in the past. Just the discussion. I don't know if Zoom has anything to do with it, because they, people didn't have to physically come into the city hall and then leave city hall. Now that we're back in person for members of council, that might impact the time of meetings. But generally for this term, the meetings have been significantly longer hours than in my experience in the previous term. And we've had more meetings probably this term than we've had in previous terms too, just because of all the, there's lots of business that we've had to take care of that that's cropped up that hasn't cropped up in other terms of council. So, the development charges sometimes take a lot of meetings. We're planning extra public meetings for developments as we're growing, and we're starting to grow faster now. So there has been some more meetings added, and meetings are taking longer just because of the business that they have to discuss.
In the nomination package, do you put kind of expected number of weekly hours or monthly hours that are attached with the position?
No, I can only speak to really like from an administrative point of view. We can only speak to maybe the hours of meetings. We've never put in like hours for constituency work, because sometimes that could really vary. It could be an hour a week, it could be 5 hours a week. But we can start like, I mean, if it's something that we think would be helpful in a nomination package, like we can certainly look into adding as much information so that when people do put their nomination in, they know kind of the expectations before they're elected, I guess, so to speak.
Well, and I mean, that may allow them to make kind of educated decisions about whether to go for the nomination, because I mean, if it's, for example, if it's average of 30 hours a week and it's making $31,000 a year and I'm a single parent, I can't afford to live on that. So, and 30 hours a week is too much time out of my week, and I won't be able to do that. I'm not saying that is the case. I'm just giving that as an example as to how the information may be used to either go for it or not go for it.
Yeah, I think we could potentially do a little better when it comes to presenting what's involved, you know, in this role, because it seems to be getting bigger and bigger with the city growing. And I think one of our intentions, you know, with our guiding principles is attracting talent, and how we do that. And, you know, by providing a decent package so people can, you know, make that choice to support our city and represent our city. I'm also wondering, sorry, go ahead, Brandy Lee.
Sorry, just one more quick question. You mentioned that there's more meetings now, right? Because there's more business to attend to. Is it expected to continue because the city is growing, or is it mainly pandemic related and that's why things are so much larger right now and it's going to revert back to normal as we go back to normal?
I think it varies. I think it kind of goes in peaks, and like, you know, like we have a lot of business, so we have extra meetings, and we just go back to a normal cycle. We have a lot of business and we have extra meetings. So it's kind of like I would want to say like a roller coaster almost. Like, for instance, in January, we probably won't have extra meetings, but in June, and this happens every June, is because everybody wants their business done before summer and wants things approved before the summer recess. June ends up, maybe the end of May and June ends up having extra meetings, just so that we aren't meeting till midnight trying to get all this cram business through. And the extra meetings to allow members of council to have a little bit more open dialogue on things, because if we're putting like 15 staff reports on an agenda, that's not benefiting anybody. So we have to also balance out the agendas. So sometimes they may meet for 3 hours and we have another meeting for 2 hours, for instance, but it's still, so we can balance out those agendas so that they aren't trying to deal with like 15 staff reports in one meeting, because that's not beneficial to staff, that's not beneficial to them. So in certain times of the year, we do have extra meetings. And sometimes we just, you know, there's special meetings that come up. There's nothing really more with the pandemic, so to speak. We would deal with anything from the pandemic at our regular meetings now. We were meeting originally at the beginning of the pandemic. Most of the business was dealing with like updates from the CAO concerning where we were with the pandemic and whatnot. But now we're pretty much back to like regular business. And for example, like this month we have budget, like the city's considering their business plan and budget, and we schedule one night, but then we have 2 carryover nights scheduled. So sometimes extra meetings just happen because they don't get business done. So they could try and get all their business plan and budget done on the Monday night, but then all of a sudden, oh, it's 11 o'clock, the meeting needs to end, so we need to carry it over to Tuesday night. So the meetings just like come in chunks, so to speak. But they are spending more time in meetings now and just debating business. And I'm sure it'll just be that roller coaster ride that kind of, as I explain it, like regular meetings, more meetings, and that's how the council cycles sometimes go. And Kelly, I just noticed Melissa has her hand up.
I'm going to Melissa, then Steve. So go ahead, Melissa.
Hi, I just wanted to clarify what Chris put in the chat about the 31,000. I think that's from several years ago, the last time we did that survey. So at that time, there was also, they were paid less because there was like a non-taxable portion. So in 2020, it was actually 40,484, and that's fully taxable.
40,000, and that includes the taxable portion. Is that what you're saying, Melissa?
I'm just saying it's like a regular salary, like
Right,
anybody
okay.
else.
Okay.
Sorry, did I hear you say something about a summer recess as well?
Yes, we have a summer recess for members of council. So we generally only meet once in the summertime and around the beginning of August, just the week after the August long weekend. We used to meet more in August, but we were finding it's difficult balance in the summertime because members of the public are on vacation as well as staff and everything. So we find that we don't want to have like any planning public meetings in the summertime because we may be disenfranchising people that may want to participate and maybe on vacation. Now it's a little bit different because I don't know how long this will continue, but I mean, we have the hybrid meeting that we could do, but generally we do take a summer recess from meetings.
Thank you.
Steve?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wendy, because I noticed the other night that they, at the council meeting, that they discussed about having a special workshop day to go over long-term financing issues and things like that. Because that is an 8-hour day or 10-hour day, however long it takes, is that taken into consideration within the $40,000 salary, or do they get extra compensation for those special days?
No, that is within their $40,000 that they make. They recommended the special meeting, so it wasn't that staff didn't recommend the special meeting. It was a recommendation of council. And we do have some, we've had workshops with them before on Saturdays. This may not be an all-day workshop, may just be a half-a-day workshop. It just depends on how long it takes them to go through the 3 agenda items that they had established for the workshop. We do feed them though, so.
Thank you.
Oh, that's good. They get fed. Okay. Yep, Brandy Lee, go ahead.
So I think what I don't know if anyone kind of feels the same, but so it's, even though they have the extra meetings throughout, essentially, I guess I would say essentially the school year, because it mirrors the school year, right? It's almost very similar in such that then they have the summers off. So their salary is really, if I'm hearing it right, is for essentially a 10-month period.
But I think,
right? Other than the one
meetings?
meeting on and off, or other than the one meeting in the summer.
But are the meetings mostly suspended, but the constituents work continue?
The constituency work would continue, yes.
Okay.
It would just be it's just the meetings that are suspended. But they have to be available if we need a special meeting in the summertime, because we've called special meetings in the summer before. So they do need to be they still able, of course, to take vacation, but we always say that there could be special meetings called. We had a couple special meetings last year to deal with the patio hours and things like that during the summer, and so that we do call special meetings. So it may not just be that August meeting we have. There could be special meetings pickled in there too, and some of the other committees I'm not 100% sure. I would have to check this, but I'm not sure if some of the other boards and commissions meet in the summer that the members of council participate on as well. These are the summer recess right now, as far as I know, just is our committees that we operate. So I'm not sure, if the Conservation Authority, for example, runs meetings in the summer, I would have to go look at their schedule.
Okay. Thank you.
I just had a few comments from the the data. When I think there's a lot of time, and I also looked at the document that Wendy sent as well. I'm not sure anybody else had a look at that one. The bylaw for committee people that are assigned to committees and how many committees there are. So from what I can gather, we have two kind of regular committees, which city building and city finance. And then we have 10 advisory committees. And then we have others, committees, corporations, and board, with a total of 26 of those for 10 councillors. So that's a lot, 38 potential spots there. When we're looking at this as a compensation, so reviewing the compensation piece, I noticed, and I just wanted to double check, I'm going to read this piece, Wendy. I think I pulled it from the overview of what the committee is specifically defining and what they're supposed to be looking at. One of the pieces was looking at honorariums paid to appointees to committees, boards, and commissions, policies concerning roles and compensation, reimbursement of council expenses, council benefits, use of corporate resources, for election purposes, and meetings with other levels of government. Does that ring true?
The corporate I'd have to go back, and I don't have the mandate in front of me, but the use of corporate resources is generally, that's an election policy. So that's generally managed through my office, and it's based on provisions in the Municipal Act and the Municipal Elections Act. So this committee wouldn't be reviewing that. That's how that policy refers to what members of council can and cannot do with their city technology, with their with their city property, so to speak, in an election year. So that would be something that's reviewed through my office. So this committee that would not be reviewed by this committee.
Right. Thank you.
And then the other thing was what did you say after the council?
Is it meetings with other levels of government? I wasn't quite sure.
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
That's dealt with separately.
All right. So honorariums, when we look at when I'm thinking about the feedback generally about committee work and how council is compensated, I was wondering, and again, I think I asked this question before, I know that the city gets reimbursed for 1 or 2 or 3 of the commissions or boards or committees directly, and I'm not talking about the mayor, back to the city for a councillor that sits on an external board. So perhaps there's an opportunity if we're thinking about reimbursements and compensation, why not take that opportunity with that money going back into the city, take that opportunity and provide that honorarium or that pay for that particular councillor that is representing the city and sitting on that board.
Or even a percentage or a partial amount of it.
I don't know what the amounts are. Wendy, do we know?
They vary depending on the committee, but they average between $1,000 to $2,000 I'm just trying to think, do they come in quarterly? I would say maybe about $2,000 a year, and maybe Melissa can correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't seen one of the.
I can try to pull up what we got from them last year. It's not a lot, like
No.
a couple $100 a meeting.
Yeah, it's not very much. It's about, I would say for the entire year, probably about 2,000.
Yeah, it's not big dollars.
But where does that money go?
It just goes into the city's budget.
Okay.
Yes, we pool all the tips.
Right. Okay. So this is an opportunity to help support their committee work and what they're doing without increasing a cost to the taxpayer? Perhaps? Brand,
I like that idea.
Yeah, I was thinking even from a calculation standpoint, even if it was split 50-50. So we calculated that there, you said there was 36 committees essentially. So how many externals? There was something like 26, I think. So even if each counselor was on 2 or 3, that's an extra 2 to 3 thousand onto their compensation package in the year. And then that kind of raises them up a bit. I know someone mentioned the 50 to 60,000 mark, but at least that brings us a little bit closer. That doesn't, so the city's still receiving some, but then they're also receiving some.
Wendy, go ahead.
I'll let Melissa jump in too, but I think we might be saying the same thing, is that not all the boards and commissions provide compensation for participation. It would be like the conservation authorities do. I'm not sure about the health unit. I think they may provide some compensation, but I'd have to look. There's only a few of them that actually provide extra compensation for participation. And
Melissa?
Yeah, so I've got the one up from the Nottawasaga Valley. And what do we get for the year here? We got $664. The Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, one counselor got $1,200 in per diems, another one got $1,300 just based on how many meetings they attend. And so that money is coming into the city's accounts, and the counselors aren't getting that. So it's really just the conservation authorities, which I think there's 3 of them. And then the health unit may pay a very small one as well. So in total for the whole year, it's maybe like $4,000 to $5,000 coming into the city.
But I think it does make a difference in their bottom line, though, with the counselors being able to be reimbursed for that. Perhaps we could get a list exactly what that is and who is providing that money and how much it is. And
Sure.
I'm going to go to Chris. Thank you, Melissa. Chris, Brandy Lee, and then Steve.
You're on mute, Chris.
There we go. I do strongly believe that a counselor should be compensated for these extracurricular committees that they sit on. However, the flip side of that is the perception of a conflict of interest of having somebody in power with the city on another committee might have undue influence internally of pushing certain things through. So that's the only other concern, is the perception of a quid pro quo, that the public might see that, oh, he's being paid for sitting on this committee and he has some extra pull with some of the other counselors and things to drive the projects through or something to that effect. So it's kind of a slippery slope, a double-edged sword that we would have to be cognizant of. That's all. But I do like the idea that if somebody is, a counselor is sitting on one of the boards, they should be compensated for their time to do that. But again, the other side of the coin is, would they be perceived as undue influence in that area because they are being compensated? So it's kind of a slippery slope. I kind of made a joke that maybe we should pool the tips and maybe everybody shares in the wealth. But again, it's something that has to be dealt with gentle hands. That's for sure.
Thank you. Brandy Lee, and then Steve.
So the other thing is, so I agree with the what he was saying about what Chris was saying about the perception externally. I'm wondering if we're going to look at it from that perspective, then maybe it would be better to just have it as it increases the salary, so that it's just part of their position and part of their salary. So it's not seen as specifically for sitting on the board. The other part to that is that we were provided, that there's, maybe 4 or 5 that provide sort of a payment for sitting on the board. So if that went directly to the counselors, not everyone is going to have a committee that pays into them. So then it's going to be inequitable, because some will be paid for being on the committee and some won't, right? So I think there's that to consider as well.
Thank you, Brandy Lee. Steve, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can tell you for the health unit, as a public member, it's not a lot of money. I get $175 a month for 11 months a year for each meeting. But I can't say, I don't know what the municipal government members that are seated on the board, whether they get paid or not. I don't know. But the public members receive $175 once a month.
Thank you. Once we have that information, Melissa, that would be great to just find out specifically what everybody gets. Very good points, everybody. Perhaps it's something that gets pooled in a sense to offset salary, because I'm not sure where that money is going into general revenue as it comes in and how it's dispensed. Could it go into councillors' salary pool in a sense to offset all of salaries, you know, to be fair and equitable, thinking about that and what that might look like. So I know it might not be much, but it's a little bit of something. But it's already there, right? We're already collecting it. We're already collecting the money, and it's representing our city. So that could be an option. Just putting it out there. Anybody else have any comments on that? Okay. There, and I know the when we think about compensation and honorariums, and when it comes to the councillors that are sitting, and part of our role is to create a package that you know, can attract people to the city and want to run for council. Perhaps as a thought, we begin to compensate, if not their committee sitting, you know, as a per meeting. Perhaps it's the chairs that could be looked at to be compensated for that extra bit of work that the chair is involved. If that's something, you know, we could think about or recommend. What's your feeling on the per committee per diem or per committee honorarium that would be in addition to their base salary if they were potentially a chair, if there's more work involved? And I know, Steve, you'd mentioned that about chair work and a little bit more involved in that.
Yes, Kelly. Yeah, the chair does, he or she, whoever's acting as chair, there's a lot of prep work that you have to do well ahead of the meetings. And then also when the meeting does come, steer the committee to the agenda and make sure that everybody stays focused on the items that are just listed on the agenda, which is sometimes can be a very, very hard topic, as you well know, being chair. And it's hard to keep some people focused without going out, you know, way out the window. So it's a challenging job, but a rewarding job too, in that you get, I guess what I'm saying, you get out of it what you put into it. Being chair or even vice chair of an organization, because the vice chair has to do as much prep as the chair in the event that he or she has to step in to fill those roles. So they should be, I think, definitely compensated. And again, provides a little bit more incentive so that if somebody gets appointed by the mayor onto a committee and they're going to take a look at it and say, well, you know what? Geez, I could be chair of that committee and I can get, you know, personal satisfaction back from it. And also, you know, there's like a carrot, you know, hanging carrot out there. It's an extra, maybe a couple $1,000s a year. Hey, but at least it's there.
Thank you, Steve. Yeah. Mm-hmm. As I'm trying to kind of, you know, move. And I know we have a few more meetings. I realize that. And we also need to get our data from the municipalities. Do we know, Brian, is that Wendy? Brian, I'm not sure who was. Wendy, go ahead.
We've started circulating it and we've gotten maybe 3 responses back. The unfortunate thing is Kingston has sent out a survey at the exact same time.
Oh.
So, but I probably could piggyback on to, I think I've contacted them and to see if we could share results because we seem to be polling the same municipalities. So maybe they'll get responses that we don't get, and I might get responses that they don't get. So the survey closes, I think, in a week. So with both of them, because we gave them a few weeks to answer everything, just because generally when us clerks circulate things to other municipalities, we like to give each other a little bit of time to respond. So we do have some responses. Maybe what we'll do is maybe at the end of next week, we'll send out what we've got so that you guys can have a look at it. And then we'll again circulate prior to our next meeting, maybe hopefully a full survey with full results, but I can't guarantee that we'll get full results because last time when we did it, we needed to chase down a couple of them that didn't provide results. So, but we'll give you as much as we can gather, and hopefully that'll assist you in some decision making.
Thank you. Thanks, Wendy. I appreciate that. So as we now have the data from the counselors, a thought that came across my desk was, do we or should we or could we send out a brief public survey that would gather citizen feedback on this task to help us? What's the appetite for that?
What would be a sample question?
We would be asking similar questions to what we asked the counselors, perhaps about their salary. We could come up with some questions, right? If we thought this was a valuable piece to ask. Have we done this before, Wendy? Have we?
No.
Okay. Steve, Steve, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just caution to that. You might get a lot of, especially at this time of the year, just getting over COVID. The economy's not doing so well, and you could get a lot of really negative responses back saying, cut their damn salaries because they don't even deserve that, and blah, blah, blah. And they act like children at the council and stuff. And so I think the potential for a lot of negativity is available on a public survey for that. And that's what I would be really cautious about.
Okay. Chris?
I echo the exact same words as what Steve has mentioned, but I was a question to probably Wendy. The mayor currently has a survey out seeing how the Barrie citizens want to see the budgets allocated accordingly to different areas. How well is that survey, that online survey, coming along? Because basically we'll probably get sort of the same results from the general public with our questions as perhaps Mayor Lehman had posted to the public about how the money should be spent.
Are you talking, are you talking about the budget allocator tool?
Yes.
Okay, so that's put out by staff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
He was the one that was tweeting about it.
Oh, no, yeah, we do this it's a survey that we do every year, the budget allocator tool. It's closed now online, of course. The results get included with the staff report that goes with the business plan. So all those comments from the public so members of council do see them as they're considering the budget. But the budget allocator tool is something that staff puts out every year in advance of the budget.
And I think if I recall the last time, was it 700 responses? 700, like I think it's the uptake is, it's not big, but if somebody else knows what that uptake is, I don't think it's a big uptake on that. I was just feeling it out, just thinking, you know, what the committee was thinking. So I appreciate that feedback. Thank you. Is it too bold of me to suggest that we start to have a conversation, or it's too early, or at least start a list of what we think we might add or change when it comes to the compensation piece, whether it was our previous discussion on committee pay, whether it was our overview and our take on the health benefit plan. Does anybody have any thoughts on what that might look as we offer up ideas and suggestions from this committee based on the information that we have so far? And I know it's not a whole lot of information, but we've had some conversation. Is there one or two points that stick out for you that you think might be a good idea? Steve, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think when it comes to a salary increase, I think you definitely have to go above the inflation rate right now, because a 2% raise or 3% raise, if inflation's running, what, 5%, to get good, when I say, or excellent qualified people, I want to reach out, to be able to reach out to every sector of, whether it be male, female, whatever the color of your skin is, that is moving to and are residents of the city of Barrie, to bring diversity and a diversity group and have skill and knowledge into the position. I think there's so much talent out there within the city that is available that it could be utilized on council. And so I think at a minimum, I'm just throwing this out there, I'd like to see the salary, the salary across the board go up at least $5,000 a year. And getting up into the 50, 60, that's a little at the high range for the city of Barrie, I think, right now. And then also with the demand, if somebody's going to make $50,000, $60,000, then they're going to want administrative people to help them. And saying that, well, I'm getting paid this amount of money, I need more administrative services. And then the last thing we need is hiring more staff at the city hall to provide administrative services to council. So I think, like I said, $45,000 minimum, and then so much per, if they get on committees and they become chair or vice chair of a certain committee, and that money that we talked about earlier coming back into the general coffers, instead of going to general coffers, that gets split as a percentage to each person that sits on different committees. So.
Thank you, Steve. That's great. I love it. So we're starting with placing our points on the table. That's very good. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. I would be the type of person that goes down the rabbit hole a little bit more differently. I don't think the 4 and 5% rate of inflation is going to be with us year after year for the next tenure of 4 years. So I don't see it increasing 5% every single year for their compensation. I also would want to correlate what the population base is of Barrie in relation to the other cities and what the councils that they're receiving. And I would make it more commensurate with an average across the board amongst those. So I don't pick sides. Mine is more an analysis of taking the average across the board. I do like your suggestion, Kelly, as well of the remuneration that comes in from everybody sitting on these various boards, that perhaps we could pool the income divided equally amongst everybody, and that could be treated as almost like a bonus at the end of the year for their time spent in that area. But I would take a more diplomatic approach than just say we should do a 5% increase. I would definitely be looking at more of the data of what Wendy can provide from the other cities and areas, more in a relation to a weighted average of what their councillors are making in relation to the population base and how many people that they're looking after in each ward. So I'm just the numbers guy. I go down the rabbit hole deep when it comes to the numbers so that I can substantiate and defend my decision or my recommendation when the time comes. So that would be my 2 cents from the cheap seats.
Thank you. I know this is great. We get all these ideas. That's our job, right? Is to get all these varying ideas from across different outlooks to have this conversation. Really great. Yeah, really great ideas. Anybody else, perhaps in regards to, in a sense of compensation and or health care spending accounts or health plans? Danielle?
Yeah, there seems to be an appetite to look at the benefit package. You know, people have different ideas as to what they would see. You know, chiropractic, vision. Some people would like a healthcare spending account. Some people like the traditional plan. You know, we didn't get answers on everything, so we will have to make. And I don't know if more answers would be coming, but you know, we kind of have to make recommendations on the data that we have. But there seems to be an appetite for really having a good look at our benefits program and maybe a healthcare spending account model or increasing some of the benefits in different areas.
Brian?
I noted in the survey that there's a mix of opinions and there's a mix of situations, and that will probably be the case for all of time to come in terms of some people who have jobs and can access another benefits plan. One thing the committee might want to consider is a kind of a hybrid model where you might want to give, for example, a healthcare spending account of $1,000 or $1,200 or $1,500, something like that, to all counselors to cover their paramedical provider expenses, and then offer dental and pharmaceutical, like insurance kind of like coverage for those who want to pay a premium like we have now. So you kind of have a bit of both. That you can cover. You can offer a more comprehensive plan for those who don't have something, but then offer something for everybody, whether that could be used for whether they have a benefits plan or not.
Thank you. That's great, Brian. I noticed that your dental plan is off the charts. It's like really good, 100%, and goes by the current. Is that for everybody? Like, that's a real winner.
I can't recall what exactly council has because we have so many benefits plans at the city, but no, not every group has 100% coverage unlimited.
It's one of the comments was about how great the dental was. You could have your teeth cleaned every, I don't know, 18 weeks or something, and it was 100%. So it was pretty expansive. Does anybody else in the HR and benefits field have comments about this? Does this sound like something that, you know, I'm not sure we're able to put that piece together, Brian, if we made the recommendation that, you know, what does that look like? What are the costs? I know one of your points, Brian, was to reduce the cost of the plan because it's very expensive for the counselors. So is this something that staff would look into and perhaps bring back to the committee to say, here are some different options that may reduce the cost for the counselor or may reduce the cost for the city, and a couple of different ideas, because I know you've dealt with those combo plans before. The healthcare spending account sounds like a great idea for folks that use that, you know, for their paramedical health, their massage, and their chiropractic. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, my point wasn't to reduce the cost. My point was that the value proposition is off. So they're not really getting value for what they're paying for. It's not that it's too expensive or like in general, but it's that their benefits haven't changed, but the benefit cost has. Whereas for all the other groups, the benefits have increased as well as the cost increase. So just to clarify. But I can come up with some some options if you'd like. Yes.
Okay, so thank you for that. The cost has remained the same, and it's a very different cost for the counselors than it is. And you need a direction from council or committee to make that more beneficial. You can't just adjust that as the benefits adjuster yourself to say, how could we get a better deal from our insurance company?
My understanding is that I'm not allowed to touch the benefits plans for the counselors without direction from somebody else.
Okay, but you see that it could use work, right? Okay.
But you can make recommendations though, correct? I mean, you can't make final decisions, but given your expertise and where as to where you see the pluses and minuses of different aspects of the plan.
With that, so Brian, you would be able to provide the committee with some, here's the existing program, here's what we heard from our counselors saying, they're short on chiropractic or physio, they're interested in healthcare spending account. So that's something that you could come back to the committee with and say, this is what I've looked at. Here, committee, make the recommendation. Does that make sense, Brian?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to do that.
That would be fabulous. Anybody else on the committee would agree with that, with Brian coming back and providing some options for us to look at?
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
that's a great idea. Yep.
Great. I just saw a black cat walk by you, Steve. Oh, there it goes again. I'm not sure if that's a good sign. Okay, great. So on this meeting, tried to stay on target here. We reviewed just a little overview. We reviewed the data that came in from the counselors. We had some discussion around that data. We have begun to our list of wishes and list of options that we may make as a recommendation from this committee. So I'd like to continue those conversations as we move forward for the next meeting. We're missing some data right now, which we're going to be getting from the municipalities that will also help us. And I'm just going to go to Chris. Go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. There's just one more question that I had pertaining with Brian. Do we have a budget? Do we have a budget to work within when we make these recommendations to, let's say, increase the health spending or add a health spending account to $1,000 or $2,000 a year per counselor? Do we have that in the budget to do it? Do we have it in the budget to increase the dental plan or the prescription drug plan? Those sort of things. Or is it just make the recommendations and we send it to RFQ and then it comes back? So does the city of Barrie have a budget to work within with these increases that might be presented? Or do we have to make cuts in other areas to make room for this, so it's a happy balance between both? We're going to give them the health spending account, but we might have to take it from somewhere else. Let's say an increase in their salary. As Steve said, maybe a 5% increase, but it would have been 5%, but we implemented a health spending account. So it's going to be a 2% increase because we needed that other 3% for the increase in the benefits. So do we have a budget that we got to keep in mind on the table here? That was just popped in my head when you guys were chatting about that.
Go ahead, Brian. Thank you, Chris.
A great question, Chris. It's probably more a Wendy question. From my perspective, where the money comes from for council is not something I don't know. We wouldn't go out to an RFP for this. Like, we would simply be working with our current benefits provider to adjust the plan. So that's just a matter of working with them. And I'm not sure what the cost. In the grand scheme of things, a $1,000 healthcare spending account for a total of $11,000 per year isn't a huge cost in the overall city budget. And the other costs, I'm not sure, like depending on what other options there are, would depend on how much it costs. But that sort of healthcare spending kind of I don't believe it's kind of like a little drop in the pond of what the city's overall budget is. That's my perspective. Wendy, you could maybe answer a bit, or Melissa, I'm not sure.
So this cost wouldn't be taking effect until the end of 2022, because it's for the new term of council. I don't think there's any issues if Brian brings back changes, if it costs a little bit more, but that would be something that council would have to approve at the end of the day, whether or not they want to go for the increased cost, if there is an increase. Because if Brian has a healthcare spending account and then they rejiggle benefits, so to speak, and it's still within what we currently have budgeted, then it won't make much difference. But I'm assuming there'll probably be a slight increase. So we would have to bring that to council's attention when we provide the recommendations, and it would be up to them to decide what they want to keep and not keep, or approve or not approve.
Is that good, Chris? Does that?
No, excellent. That was great. Yes, I wasn't sure if we needed to work within a budget at all.
That's great. Thanks, Wendy. That's very helpful. Brian will come back. Thank you, Brian, for bringing that back to the table for us. Is that something that you could potentially have at our next meeting? I'm wondering.
Possibly, it might be 2 meetings from now. Depends on, we work with a consultant to figure out the costs and do some actuarial calculations and all that. So yeah, it depends on how quickly they get back to me on that.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thank you. That's great. So perhaps then, does anybody have anything else pertaining to our discussions today around review of the council feedback regarding benefits and or salaries? We pretty good? Oh, yeah. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to ask Wendy one thing. As we get into talking specific amounts of money, is there anything, any contract negotiations or anything that's going to limit us so that if the committee, we recommend a certain percentage increase for council to increase their, is that going to affect then unionized staff saying, well, hold on here, council got X percentage, we want the same. So I don't want to be held to like a competition type of thing.
I don't know if Brian wants to jump in a second, but what we did last time is that we determined their base salary, so whatever their base compensation would be, and then we would, any increases would be tied to a whatever increase the non-union or the union staff would get. So they wouldn't, the annual increases wouldn't be subject to like 5 or 6%. It would be, this committee would determine a base salary and then likely tie it to that annual increase. And I don't know, I think I've got it right, Brian?
Yes, correct. Yeah, there, it's, you can speculate. There might be some folks who would be upset if, council was getting a 5% increase every year and they were only get a 1% increase. Some people, other people wouldn't care. So, I'm not sure that maybe is a factor in your decision. But it's last time it was just tied to that same percentage increase, which makes it easy to know what to do going forward. And then it's all just sort of one idea.
Thank you.
That's great. Wendy, do you still have your hand up?
Yeah. Yes, I just wanted to go back to, before we wrap up, the extra questions that the members of council had suggested asking, the ones I brought to your attention concerning, are they satisfied with the current rate of pay, pension type contributions, and time spent in meetings. Well, we kind of touched on the time spent in meetings, but did you want me to go back and at least ask the other two questions? Or are you satisfied with the results you've gotten? And then, excuse me, my dog's barking in the background. Are you satisfied with the results you have and not needing to go back with additional questions?
What is the feeling from the committee on a question around OMERS, I guess the pension, if council would be eligible for pension, and if they are specifically asking about their salary? Why did I think we already have that? I'm not sure, but.
I think we already have that, so maybe it might just be the pension question.
The pension, is that something we want to add? Members, committee?
It's something,
Okay,
if you decide,
sure.
sorry, I was just going to jump in. If you decide, if you don't want to decide today, like maybe if you want to wait to see what other feedback you get, and then we could go, because there may be other questions based on maybe what the other municipalities provide that we may want to go back to our members of council with. So maybe we create a small, if you want to create a small list at the next meeting, so we don't keep going back and forth with them, and maybe send a follow-up survey. That might be the best thing to do as well.
Great idea, Wendy. Thank you. Danielle?
Are we going to receive more responses? Like, I think we're missing 2, right? Like, do you think those other 2 people are going to respond, or is the data that we received kind of the full data?
I will have to see the 2 members who didn't respond, but I would probably say that this is probably the data that you'll have. But I will try and see if I can solicit responses from the other 2 that haven't responded yet.
Is there any particular reason behind the other 2 not responding? Is it that they don't have time, or they don't agree with it, or?
I'd have to, again, I'm going to have to see who, because I resent it the other day, and that's when we got the flood of responses to get to the 8. So it might have just been that they didn't have time to respond to it. So I'll follow up with the 2 members of council that didn't respond.
Thank you, Wendy. That's great. Okay. For our next meeting on December 3rd, Wendy, hopefully we'll have a little bit of information to digest before that from the other municipalities. And then we could have that. Yeah, super. We could have that on our agenda then for December 3rd. Does anybody else have any other agenda items for the next meeting that they would like to review? Good. Wendy, go ahead.
Did you want to have an agenda item? And I mean, if you don't get to it, that's fine. Did you want to have an agenda item like consideration of like something about considering whatever you would like to recommend to council as a start of a report, so that we can start, that might help us start building a report for you guys to review in January at your January meeting. So we have something to kind of build upon. So that could be a potential agenda item as well.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah,
we can start to, as we did today, with our 1 or 2 items on our wish list of opportunities to provide a recommendation. So we can add those 2 items to the list, Wendy, that would be great. And then we can have that conversation as part of our meeting on December 3rd to see how far we get reviewing the municipality data. That would be great. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody. If anybody is good to go, I'm going to adjourn the meeting, and we will chat on December 3rd. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Bye.